Hi, hello, and welcome to yet another Expat. This is episode 62, recording summer from Berlin. Now, isn't it great when you find some forgotten money in a pocket? Does this still happen? Every now and then, maybe you take off the winter stuff and in there, in the inside pocket, you find some cash. Now, this is a joy some of us get to experience. Something similar happened to 50 Cent. Not the coin, the rapper. He was selling his album in 2014, Animal Ambition, and he had enabled the ability to pay with Bitcoin. That was quite a groundbreaking thing at the time, 2014. Well, apparently he forgot it. He forgot about the whole thing completely, and he just realized now that Bitcoin is trading somewhere on 110,000, that he had that stash of Bitcoin. So, in his old pocket, 50 Cent found $76 million. So good one for you, 50 Cent, and for everyone who bought the album at the time. In today's money, it's costing them $17,000. Do you have any forgotten Bitcoin somewhere? Is there a hard drive, a secret phrase you wrote down 10 years ago that you wish you would have just made it into a post-it in front of your screen instead of trying to hide it left and right? I for sure am. And you know what I think? In the dystopian future that we're headed towards in increasing speed, there will probably be some sort of Cyberpunk, Mad Max scavenger hunters that will go in hardware dump fields and try to find old computers and harvest their hard drives for the hope of some forgotten Bitcoin, flying there with their hoverboards and the metal detectors of the future, trying to find the forgotten Bitcoins of the past might be a thing. And do you know how much in Bitcoin is presumably lost in this way? About 3 to 4 million Bitcoins are presumably lost forever from past users. That is, people forgetting their private keys or seed phrases, hardware failure with no backup, from the early days when Bitcoin was worth very little, and of course mistakenly discarded devices like hard drives in landfills. Those 4 million Bitcoins would be worth $240 billion. And I just remember there is this guy in England, I think, who knows where he has put his hard drive with millions of Bitcoin. And he has been begging the city to let him go in the landfill and do a huge effort to try and find it. He has even a company that is sponsoring him because if they find that money, everyone can get paid. I think he has something like 600 million euros in Bitcoin that's dumped somewhere from his old computer in that landfill. And he keeps getting denied. So there is at least one landfill with Bitcoin lost. Now, in other interesting news, Denmark is setting a new standard in the fight against AI deepfakes. What does that mean? Soon individuals will have the explicit right to their own body, facial features, and voice under a pioneering new law. Because if you thought you own your face, you don't. And if you wish to own your face or your body, I guess you have to go to Denmark. This is a step, to empower citizens to control the digital side of us against the tech platforms and the AI misuse that is just scraping everything over the web again and again and again. I think there will be a global shift towards stronger personal data protection. I hope so. I think for the next generations, we're kind of doomed out there. The whole concept of privacy, we were too naive on the internet. Things were too wild west out there. No one is asking for permission and not really asking for forgiveness with the data theft that's happening. But yeah, good one for you, Denmark. Thanks for helping people copyright their faces. Kind of a weird world to live in. So this made headlines. I'm not exactly sure how Denmark can enforce this, because you can enforce it within your own country, but what happens outside? And some say that this initiative is being put out there to be sold as a good thing for public support, but at the core of it it's aiming to protect public figures from attacks against their reputation. Because at the moment, authorities cannot or don't prosecute identity theft online because it's too resource intensive. So maybe they want to create some sort of protocol to know and be able to check from a central point of view. So it could be just to prevent AI satire of political and other influential figures, or it could be a step in the right direction. Talking about making steps in the right direction, we have Berlin that has decided to ban from the suburban trains and the subway trains all knives and other weapons. Apparently, they're banning the carrying of weapons and knives from the July 17th, so just a few days ago, this passed. And I'm wondering, was it allowed before to carry weapons and knives in the trains? I am not allowed to eat one piece of a pretzel or have one sip of my coffee inside a train, and I could be having guns and knives all along all this time? Sounds like the baseline of using public infrastructure to not carry weapons with you. Like here we have Denmark legislating against people grabbing other people's face and putting it in AI, and Berlin just wakes up and says, hey, you know what? I think we should not have weapons and knives in the trains. What do you think about that? But good, the only weapon I carry with me is my new crow whistle that can whistle to crows, my new friends, your future enemies. So all of you knife carriers, beware. The trains now are not a welcome place for you. You could be searched with no warrant. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey Hermes, we don't care about the law and the legislations. How are you doing? Thank you very much for asking. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Do I ever say that? I think I say it often enough, but it's always good to express gratitude. So thank you for letting this voice come inside your head and fill it up with useless information. I am doing very well. My back hurts. In that sense, I'm not doing very well. I often remember the first episode of this podcast called Bad Haircuts and Workout Promises, and I think, has anything changed for you, Hermes? The answer is probably no, besides the extra 8 kilos that I'm carrying. And I don't mean my baby, I mean my extra belly, but on top of that there is 7 extra kilos coming from the baby, 15 extra kilos. That back of mine is complaining, and somehow, even though I don't express it anywhere besides here, the ads that I'm getting are, like I said last time, looking for people who have never exercised, do this complete transformation. So this is my life, but on the baby side, something extraordinary happened. And now, this is going to be parent talk. I know that some of this does not resonate, and I've heard a lot of parents before I had a child, and I could hear what they say, but it didn't hit the right spot. So maybe this doesn't hit the right spot, but here's what happened. Our baby has been only having breast milk. He's now 6 months old. He has never tried anything in his life besides the breast milk. Now, as a good friend of mine pointed out, he might have actually tried something else, and that is our sweat. Inevitably, every now and then, he likes to put his mouth on skin. But we had this moment. The midwife said that we could try giving him a cucumber. And we thought, is he ready? When the babies are ready, they're kind of really look at you intensely when you're chewing food. They grab with their hands, trying to grab the spoon of your hand. And when it's time, you kind of know it. They ask for it. So there we go. If you want your baby to try cucumber, do it after breastfeeding, so they are already fed. So this feels like a nice thing on top, so they don't fight for survival. And yeah, he looked at the cucumber, and then he just opened his little mouth and tried to shove the whole thing inside. So there he was, cucumber all in. His eyes were wide open, and he started making these weird sounds of pleasure. And of course, he cannot bite. He doesn't have teeth. So he was just doing the best with his gums and his tongue licking all over. And it's very bizarre to think that he's tasting something different for the first time in his life. This is probably how it feels when you have a spiritual awakening where you take an ayahuasca or some LSD and then you kind of expand your senses when the synapses in your head just connect in a different way and give you this unfelt before sensation. And this is what I got to see in his eyes, just trying to compute what is happening, just trying to process that there is a new taste, something else in his life. So this was a phenomenal moment. It's like a milestone. The world will never be the same because now he has tried the cucumber and the whole new avenue of things to try will slowly start. And I'm just thinking, how cool would it be if you could just get one more sense? And I know that he has tasted things, so you could say that it's not a new sense, it's just a new taste. However, if the taste has always been the same thing, I think it hits very differently. So if someone said, hey, Ermi, do you want a seventh sense? Not a sixth one, because I don't want to be seeing dead people like that little boy in the movie. I would lose my mind. I would say, yes, give me a seventh sense. Give me one more sense. I want to experience. This is what it's all about at the end of the day, right? This is why the influencers travel to Bali and shove those stories up in our faces, because experiencing things is probably what it's all about. Now, I just remembered trying to hack new senses. There was this guy who installed now this is getting weird, okay? I'm sorry it's getting weird, but technically, maybe someone has done it. So there's this weird guy who was doing some biohacking. It's people that try hacks on themselves. And he installed an antenna on his head, and he could perceive sound. Okay, so here it is. I got it. So there's this guy called Neil Harbison. He's a British-Spanish artist and self-described cyborg. He was born with achromatopsia, beautiful Greek word, a condition that means he doesn't see colors, only in grayscale. And in order to fix it, he had an antenna surgically implanted into his skull. And what that antenna does, it detects the colors in front of him and translates them into sound frequencies that he can hear through bone conduction, like the sound travels through his skull. So in this way, he can hear colors. So he keeps getting these small frequencies for the colors that exist around him. And that thing, I don't know how it feels like and how it's perceived, but I guess he kind of brought a new way of sensing. Just for the record, that antenna is implanted and legally recognized as part of his body, which means that he even convinced the UK government to recognize the antenna in his passport photo, which was a precedent for body integrated technology. But yes, sorry I went from my baby trying for the first time a cucumber into the biohackers and the sensory augmentation movement. But a last thing there, if you are interested, there are some people that install devices on them that help them understand where is the magnetic north. Imagine you have a compass, but instead of the compass in your hand, you have a small device attached to your chest, to your ankle, to your head that lets you know when you're facing the magnetic north. It could be a small vibration, it could be some sort of a sound. And then over time, they say they develop a sixth sense, like a always-on compass that eventually becomes subconscious. So they are feeling their orientation all the time, like birds do, or sea turtles, or a lot of animals actually can do that. So there it goes. Babies and biohacking, that's where we get. Let's wrap this up slowly, shall we? Now, as a last thing, I have some good news. It's one of these positive things out there, but we need to touch a subject that I have promised not to touch in the past, and then I've touched it multiple times, and that is PFAS, the forever chemicals that are a huge problem and will be an even bigger one as time progresses. So now there is a significant progress done in trying to find some way to find these toxical chemicals. The problem with them is that they cannot be broken into other elements. They are too strong. They have very strong chemical chains and they are indestructible. That's the problem, and they're super tiny, and they go in our blood, in our heads, and in the environment, and all of that. But there is a new research coming from Cambridge, and this is why funding universities matters. And they discovered that there are some gut microbes that live in your guts, that can absorb and help the body expel forever chemicals. And previously, the only way to reduce the levels of PFAS was by bloodletting or a drug with unpleasant side effects. So we're talking about pretty serious stuff. But apparently, there are some kinds of gut microbes that could absorb toxic PFAS and help expel them through what, right? Through your poo-poo. And this is the new first of its kind University of Cambridge research. So what they're hoping now to do is, from this study, the authors want to develop probiotic dietary supplements that can boost the level of helpful microbes in the human gut, which would likely reduce PFA levels. At the same time, the Trump administration removed $15 million in research from PFAS on the US farms because no one wants to be regulated. And PFAS, they're a class of about 15,000 compounds. And the reason for that is because when one gets banned, they can just change one molecule and then re-release it. And then it's technically not the previous. So it's almost like the synthetic drugs. Do you know how these synthetic THC were in kiosks and they were being sold left and right? And technically, they are not illegal because it's a new substance that hasn't been yet classified as illegal. So they get to sell it. And when it gets banned, they can change the formula just by a tiny bit, and then it's the same stuff. This is what's happening in PFAS. That's why we have 15,000 of them. They're used to make products water and stain resistant and grease resistant from the pants, from the clothing and all of that. But they have been linked to cancer, birth defects, decreased immunity, high cholesterol, kidney diseases, and a range of other serious health problems. But it looks like the solution is again in the gut microbes. Fascinating space. The gut is such a complex thing. We say, I have this feeling in my gut. And this exists in almost all languages. And there is a reason for that, because there are 3 different ways in which you can think. And now this sounds bananas, but you can think from your head, you can think from your heart, and you can think from your gut. The gut has its own enteric nervous system, often called the second brain. It has 500 million neurons. So it communicates constantly with your brain via a thing called the vagus nerve, which is also important when you try to meditate, and the fight or flight syndrome and all of those sorts of things. But it influences your mood, your intuition, your decision making, and even risk aversion. Your heart also has a neural network, but it's about 40,000 neurons. In that sense, it can feel and remember in some primitive ways. But these news make me happy. If you can get good probiotics and help lower your PFAS, wouldn't it be better if we could regulate the industry in how we make PFAS than having to find a new drug or a new remedy for the problem we have created rather than touching the root? Yes, it is, but this is good news. And I will finish off with some love for the gut, because the gut is more than just a digestion machine. It's a neural, immune, and microbial hub, and I will end this episode with a few remarkable real-world examples of how the gut influences health, behavior, and personality. Don't ask me why. It's warm, it's summer. Let's just give some love to our gut that is trying to do its best. Now, starting off, the gut-brain axis, your gut produces 90% of serotonin. The feel-good neurotransmitter, serotonin, such a joy. And alterations in your gut bacteria can be linked to anxiety and depression, even autism and spectrum disorders, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. An example of that is that mice were given gut microbes from anxious humans, and they became anxious, and vice versa. The brain behavior changed the bacteria. And this is a weird thing. And now we're entering weird areas, but hear me out. No one wants to have a deadly infection, right? If you have a deadly infection, you would pray that there is a cure to get it away. You would try drugs, you would try different pharmaceuticals. What if someone told you that you can cure deadly infections by transferring feces, poo-poo, from a healthy person into a sick person and restore the gut bacteria. How would you transfer the poo-poo and where would you put that poo-poo is exactly what you're thinking about. This is how it works. You take the healthy feces, you put them in the colon of the sick person. And this has a 90 to 95% success rate when antibiotics fail. It manages to restore the gut bacteria. There is a very deadly infection, a superbug, that can make life-threatening diarrhea. Okay, this is what it does. It's life-threatening diarrhea and it kills thousands of people yearly. And if you do that, if you put the healthy poo-poo, you get a 90 to 95% success rate. And the weirdest thing about it, it's not disgusting, we're done with the disgusting, is that in some rare cases, personality traits, cravings, or even the weight changed after this transplant, suggesting that the microbiome can influence the mind, as we said before with the mice. More studies, if you take gut bacteria from obese people and put them into germ-free mice, so healthy mice, then the mice will get fat, even with the same diet. But with this, I will end. I will leave you alone. I will finish this podcast and I will wrap it up. Whether you are 50 Cent, who happened to found 80 million in forgotten Bitcoin, or someone in Denmark that is looking to make sure your face is your own and the AI doesn't take it. If you're carrying weapons in the U-Bahn, or if you tried a cucumber for the first time, put an antenna in your head, listen to the colors, navigate to the north, and wait for those probiotics to come out so we can clean some of that PFA we've been storing so lovingly into our very, very precious gut. And if shit gets tough, you can get some not so tough shit and just kind of put the shit in the... Okay, not all of the problems can be solved with a feces transplant, so keep that in mind as well. All right, this was it. Have a lovely, lovely weekend and week and evening and everything, and I will see you next time. Bye!